What would you do if you came home to find your housekeeper had prepared something that would make you question everything you thought you knew about wealth, family, and what truly matters? This is the story of Daniel Rost, a Silicon Valley millionaire who arrived home 6 hours early and discovered something that would reduce him to tears and transform his understanding of what it means to be rich. It's a gray Wednesday afternoon in November 2021, and Daniel Frost is sitting in a first-class cabin on a flight from Tokyo back to San Francisco. The tech conference he'd flown 14 hours to attend had been abruptly canceled due to a COVID outbreak among speakers, and he's heading home 3 days ahead of schedule. At 47 years old, Daniel has everything the world tells you success looks like: a $12 million home in Atherton, a Tesla in the garage, a portfolio of investments worth north of $60 million from selling his cybersecurity startup 5 years earlier. He's also profoundly alone in ways he rarely admits even to himself. His wife Lauren died of ovarian cancer 2 years ago. His teenage daughter Emma lives with his ex-sister-in-law in Boston, unable to bear being in the house full of memories. And Daniel, who once prided himself on being present and engaged, has become a ghost in his own life, filling emptiness with work and travel. As his Uber pulls up to the house at 2 in the afternoon, Daniel notices something unusual. There's music playing inside, something classical that Lauren used to love. Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, he realizes, a piece she'd play on the piano during difficult chemo days when she needed something beautiful to hold on to. He unlocks the front door quietly, not wanting to startle Rosa Martinez, his housekeeper of 8 years. Rosa wasn't supposed to be here today. She normally came Mondays and Thursdays, but Daniel's assistant must have asked her to prepare the house for his originally scheduled Sunday return. He expects to find her cleaning, maybe organizing his mail, the standard tasks he pays her a generous salary to handle, while he's away building a life that looks impressive from the outside but feels hollow from within. What Daniel sees when he enters the living room stops him completely. The space has been transformed. Every surface holds framed photographs he'd boxed away after Lauren's death because looking at them hurt too much. Pictures of Lauren laughing at their wedding, of Emma as a baby being held by her mother, of family vacations to Hawaii and road trips through Big Sur. The dining table, which he hasn't used in 2 years because eating alone in that formal space felt absurd, is set for 2 with Lauren's good china, the Wedgwood pattern her grandmother had given them. Fresh flowers, Lauren's favorite white peonies, fill a crystal vase as a centerpiece. And there, at the piano Lauren used to play, sits Rosa's teenage son Miguel, carefully working through the Beethoven piece, his fingers tentative but earnest on the keys. Daniel stands frozen in the doorway as Rosa emerges from the kitchen carrying a dish he recognizes instantly. Chicken mole, Lauren's signature recipe that she'd learned from her college roommate and perfected over 20 years. The aroma hits him like a physical force, carrying with it 1,000 memories of dinner parties and quiet Sunday evenings, and the particular way Lauren would taste the sauce from a wooden spoon, adjusting spices until it was exactly right. Rosa sees him, and her face fills with alarm. "Mr. Frost, I didn't expect you until Sunday. I can explain everything, Her voice catches as she realizes how this must look. Her son playing his piano, her cooking his late wife's food, photographs everywhere exposing the grief Daniel has tried so hard to box away. But Daniel isn't angry. He's crying, tears streaming down his face in a way he hasn't allowed himself to cry since the funeral, since he decided that being strong meant being controlled. "Rosa, what is all this?" he manages to ask. She sets down the dish with shaking hands and explains in a rush of words. "Emma called me 2 weeks ago. She's worried about you, Mr. Frost. She says you're disappearing, that you work all the time and travel constantly and never talk about her mother anymore. She asked me to help prepare something for when you got back, something that would remind you that you still have a home, not just a house. I'm so sorry if I overstepped. She stops because Daniel is shaking his head, still crying, but now smiling too. This broken expression of pain and relief and gratitude. Miguel stops playing, embarrassed to be caught in this emotional moment. Daniel walks over to the piano and places a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Don't stop, please. My wife loved that piece." Miguel resumes playing, and Daniel stands there listening while Rosa watches anxiously from the kitchen doorway. When the piece ends, Daniel asks Miguel, "How long have you been learning piano?" The boy looks at his mother before answering. About a year, Mr. Frost. My mom mentioned once that you had a piano nobody played, and I'd always wanted to learn. She brings me here sometimes when she works so I can practice. I hope that's okay. This detail, this small revelation, cracks something open in Daniel. For 8 years, Rosa has worked in his home with quiet competence, maintaining his space, respecting his privacy, never asking for anything beyond her agreed salary. He's been a good employer in conventional terms, paid her well above market rate, given generous holiday bonuses, never complained about her work. But he'd never really seen her, never understood that she was a mother raising 2 kids on her own after her husband died in a construction accident, never learned that Miguel dreamed of becoming a music teacher, never realized that his untouched piano represented an opportunity for a kid who couldn't afford lessons or an instrument of his own. Daniel asks Rosa and Miguel to stay for dinner, insisting despite their protests that it would be awkward. They sit at the formally set table, the three of them in a house designed for entertaining dozens, and eat Lauren's chicken mole while Daniel asks questions he should have asked years ago. He learns that Rosa's daughter Sophia is studying nursing at community college, working night shifts at CVS to pay tuition. He learns that Miguel practices piano at Daniel's house for 2 hours every Monday and Thursday, using method books he checks out from the library. He learns that Rosa had found Emma's phone number in the house directory and called her because she'd noticed Daniel seemed increasingly disconnected, that the vital signs of human life in the house, dirty dishes, rumpled sheets, lights left on, had been disappearing as he spent more time away. Emma had apparently been planning this intervention for weeks. She'd sent Rosa money to buy the flowers and ingredients for her mother's recipe. She'd asked Rosa to frame the photos Daniel had hidden away. And she'd asked Miguel to learn Moonlight Sonata specifically for this moment, knowing her father couldn't resist that particular piece without confronting his grief. The whole thing had been orchestrated by a 17-year-old girl who lived 3,000 miles away but understood that her father was slowly erasing himself trying to escape pain. After dinner, Daniel makes a video call to Emma in Boston. Rosa and Miguel quietly excuse themselves, but Daniel asks them to stay. When Emma's face appears on screen, Daniel sees his late wife in every feature. The same dark eyes, the same determined jaw, the same way of tilting her head when thinking. "Dad, you're home early," Emma says, trying to read his expression. "Did Rosa do the thing?" Daniel nods, unable to speak for a moment. When he does, the words come out raw and honest. "You're right. I've been running away. From the house, from the memories, from you, because looking at you reminds me so much of your mother. And I thought that was protecting both of us, but I was wrong. I was just being a coward." Emma starts crying too, this video conversation becoming a moment of breakthrough neither of them knew they needed. They talk for 2 hours, the most honest conversation they've had since Lauren died. Emma admits she's been angry at him for emotionally abandoning her, for sending money instead of showing up, for acting like being busy was the same as being present. Daniel admits he didn't know how to be a father without Lauren, who'd been the emotional center of their family while he'd focused on building companies. They're both broken, both trying to survive grief and isolation. And it's taken a housekeeper's compassion and courage to create the space for this reconciliation. The next morning, Daniel sits down with Rosa over coffee and makes her an offer. He wants to establish a college fund for Sophia's nursing education and Miguel's eventual college expenses. Rosa tries to refuse, insisting she can't accept charity, but Daniel stops her. "This isn't charity, Rosa. You gave me back something I thought I'd lost forever, permission to feel everything I've been avoiding. You could have just cleaned my house and collected your paycheck. Instead, you cared enough about a broken man and his daughter to risk your job creating something that would force me to face my grief. That's not part of your job description, but it saved my life." The fund is established within weeks, enough to cover both kids' full educations and living expenses. But Daniel goes further. He reaches out to his network and helps Sophia secure a nursing scholarship program that includes mentorship and guaranteed placement at a top hospital after graduation. He connects Miguel with a retired pianist who agrees to give him lessons free of charge, the kind of training that typically costs hundreds per hour. And he asks Rosa to bring her children to the house regularly, not as employees or charity cases, but as family, because the house that had become a mausoleum needs to be a living space again. By December, Emma has moved back home, transferring to a California university for the spring semester. She and Daniel eat dinner together most nights, often with Rosa's family joining them. Miguel plays piano while they cook, working through increasingly complex pieces. Sophia stops by in her scrubs after hospital shifts, sharing stories about patients that remind Daniel of Lauren's final months, conversations that hurt but also heal. The house fills with life again, messy and imperfect and nothing like the controlled existence Daniel had constructed around his grief. That a year later, Daniel establishes the Lauren Frost Foundation, focused on supporting families dealing with cancer through both medical and emotional support services. Rosa becomes the foundation's community outreach director, using her natural empathy and her own experience with loss to connect with families in crisis. Miguel, now excelling in piano with professional training, performs at foundation fundraisers. Sophia, completing her nursing degree, volunteers at the foundation's support groups. Emma works there part-time while finishing college, finding purpose in honoring her mother's memory through service. In interviews about the foundation's launch, Daniel tells the story of coming home early and finding his housekeeper had prepared a gift that changed everything. He's asked by a reporter why he calls it a gift rather than an intervention or a wake-up call. His answer is simple: because Rosa and my daughter gave me permission to remember, to feel, to be broken and whole at the same time. They reminded me that running from grief isn't strength, it's just loneliness. And they showed me that family isn't just the people you're born to or marry. It's the people who care enough to tell you the truth and prepare you a meal and play you a song when you've forgotten how to come home. The statistics on grief and isolation are sobering. According to the American Psychological Association, prolonged grief disorder affects roughly 10% of bereaved individuals, often characterized by withdrawal from relationships and emotional numbing. Men, particularly, struggle with grief and isolation, with studies showing they're less likely to seek support and more likely to cope through work or other distractions. Daniel had been textbook case of complicated grief, using his wealth and mobility to avoid processing loss, slowly disappearing into a life that looked successful but felt empty. What's the lesson from Daniel Frost's story? It's not just about a millionaire and his housekeeper, though their relationship transformed both their lives. It's about how sometimes the people we pay to maintain our spaces see us more clearly than we see ourselves. It's about courage, the courage Rosa showed in risking her job to help a man who was drowning in grief, the courage Emma showed in refusing to let her father disappear, the courage Daniel eventually found to stop running and start feeling. And it's about understanding that wealth means nothing if you're alone in a beautiful house with no one to share it with. That success is meaningless if you're too busy achieving to notice you've lost connection with everyone who matters. If this story touched you, hit that like button and share in the comments about a time someone showed you unexpected kindness that changed your perspective. Subscribe for more stories that remind us what really matters beyond money and status and achievement. Because sometimes coming home early is the best decision you'll ever make. And sometimes the gift waiting for you isn't what you expected, but exactly what you needed. And sometimes the people we overlook are the ones who save us, if we're humble enough to let them.